huge thanks to everybody that's been, I guess, like I said, shouting me out on other Bigfoot channels and stuff. Because holy crap, is it working? Keep it up. Whatever you're doing, keep it up because there's a lot of people that are seeing this stuff, I guess, and coming over to my channel, which is great. I mean, all I can say is thank you and keep spreading the word because it's working great. Something I may start throwing into my videos just to lighten them up a little bit is maybe like at the beginning of each video I'll do a quick little like funniest thing I saw today, or just something that might be funny or interesting. Interesting. And you may have noticed I've been looking for some sort of a backup for my content just in case something ever happens. I don't know why it would, but just in case so it doesn't all just vanish and I'm just out of luck. But also a backup to send out notifications somehow because I have so many problems with the notifications not getting sent out. Well, without going into a bunch of detail, the only thing I've found thus far is email. So if you don't mind sending me an email to jknob6@gmail.com, jknob6@gmail.com, and just, to write anything in it, just put sub in the subject line or something like that. I'll add you to an email list, and that way I will have a backup way to, send out notifications. I may eventually go to Rumble or somewhere, but I don't know anything about this stuff, hardly at all. I'm just looking for some viable alternative to keep my content and to be able to get notifications sent out reliably. So until then, guys, send me an email, and I'll get you on a list to where we can at least stay in touch and get those notifications out. Okay, so just as a test of this thing I was talking about doing, I'll give it the funniest YouTube comment that I've seen recently. And I was listening to some heavy metal music. I don't even know why. I usually don't listen to heavy metal that much, but listened to some heavy metal music, and I look at the comment section, and I just thought it was so random and funny. This person put, "This song makes me want to break into people's houses and toast all their bread." I have no idea what that even means. I just thought it was random and hilarious. So yeah, maybe you guys will get a kick out of that, but let's get into the encounters here. So guys, this one comes in from a lady in the swamplands of Mississippi. And she didn't want to say exactly where, but she said anybody who's been to Mississippi or who has lived there would know probably where she was talking about. Back in 2015, I was sitting in my boat. I used to go out on these swamps to relax in my boat. I know that's probably a non-traditional way to relax, and a lot of people might think it's kind of creepy and nasty, but part of the appeal of being able to go out there where nobody else wants to be is that you are totally in a peaceful environment. Nothing around, nobody bothering you. Now when I say a boat, it's not really a big boat. It's, I guess, what you would call, or what people used to call, a John boat. It's maybe 10 or 15 feet long. It's basically just big enough for 1 to 2 people to go out and get the job done. If you're trying to fish or trying to just hang out in the water, it's not very big. It can't do a whole lot. Well, I used to like to take my dog out with me on that boat and just paddle around and relax, listen to the sounds, which there weren't a whole lot of sounds, but the sounds that you did hear were very peaceful, and my dog and I always liked to go out there at least once a week and just sort of paddle around and listen to the things of nature. Another thing that would put me even more in a relaxed state is my dog was always, and I mean always, on the alert and would alert me if anything was noticed that was out of the ordinary, so I knew I could totally relax and rely on my dog to alert me. I've always been totally into the subject of Bigfoot, and after thinking about my encounter before I sent it in to you, I actually got to thinking and thought, this is pretty similar to an encounter I witnessed, or I should say watched, on an Animal Planet show with Bobo, where they were interviewing this lady during a very rainy day, so it kind of struck home to me. Personally, I don't understand why that show gets that much hate. There's not a whole lot to choose from in the stuff we want to watch nowadays with this subject, and I don't think it's that bad. It's pretty interesting to me. So my dog and I were sitting in my boat one day, like I was saying, and we did hear a really loud noise off in the distance. When I say off in the distance, I'm going to guess maybe 500 yards. It was off to my left a little bit, but almost right in front of me. I sat up in the boat immediately and started trying to really pay attention and hear what was going on. It did sound somewhat like a howl, but not like a howl I'm used to, but that's the closest thing I know to describe it. Just to let you in on something, I was actually in talks with a very big Bigfoot, let's just say, source of information for my story, but they wanted to sensationalize it and make it sound juicier than it really was, and I didn't feel like that was right. I feel like it should just be exactly what happened without trying to make it something packaged to appeal to people more. So as I'm sitting there listening to this noise, and really trying to take in what I hear, I noticed my dog started whimpering and acting really uneasy. The tail was not wagging, the hair was sort of standing up on the back. It was really not liking that sound, and I didn't like it either. I tried to row out further and get closer to this noise, because I was curious, and curiosity got the best of me, but it seemed like no matter how far I went, the sound wasn't getting any closer, but maybe that was just my imagination. It started to bother my dog so much that I decided it was best just to go back. So we turned around and went back all the way to the shore on the opposite end where I got in, and we went back to the house. I made myself a tomato sandwich because I'm weird and I eat those a lot, and I took it on a paper plate out to where we were originally, or next to the shore at least, and I was eating it, and for some reason my stomach started bothering me, and I didn't want to finish it. So I left about half of it, or a little less than half, on that plate, and I went inside to do something else, and I forgot about it out there. Well, you guessed it, when I came back out, the food was gone. And I've been in my living situation for a very long time, and food does not just show up missing. It never has before. And I know a lot of people are going to think, yeah, well, animals can come and go whenever they want, and that's true, but there was just something strange about the way that plate was not disturbed. And there were no traces of that food left anywhere. Something came to that, perfectly got the sandwich off, not disturbing anything, not dropping anything, and left. Maybe it shouldn't have, maybe I'm just easily spooked, but that did get me spooked. So I started to walk around the side of this bankment. That's a bad habit I picked up from my mom, calling it bankment. It's embankment, but she always called it bankment. And I kept circling around from left to right to left, seeing if I could see anything, and my dog was right there with me. Well, again, the dog was uneasy. And I was too, and that's just not really like either one of us to be uneasy about anything. And trust me, I know my dog. I decided to hop on my bike, and yes, I have an actual bicycle. I'm a grown person with a bicycle. I know it's weird, but I just always like to get around on my property on that bicycle. It's better exercise than a four-wheeler. So my dog and I totally circled in a clockwise fashion the entire swampy area, and that took at least an hour and a half. We didn't see or hear a single thing at that point. But I kid you not, that dog kept looking in the direction. I don't know how far out it could see really, but it kept looking in the direction of where we heard that noise. And I don't know about you guys, but the more my dog acts funny, the more it affects me. And I don't like it at all. I may not be the best Bigfoot storyteller, but just bear with me. I want you to get this directly from the horse's mouth. By the way, I'm going to email you some pictures and video and actual audio recordings as well, to let me know what you think. Don't please put them immediately on your channel, just look at them and tell me what you think, and then we'll go from there. If I think that you think also they're pretty good and we both concur on this, maybe I'll give you the go-ahead to include it on one of your things on your channel. I guess I just really value your opinion, and I want to do it that route. So the next part of what had happened to me actually happened to me in my house. And it happened to me in my house 2 mornings later, very, very early, about 4 a.m. I was awakened to a shaking and rattling on the sides of my house that I thought initially was an earthquake. But it only lasted several seconds, so I was really confused, and my dog was freaking out. So we both went into my kitchen and lit a candle. That's another weird thing about me. Who uses candles for illumination anymore? Leave it to me to not just grab his flashlight. About a minute or two later, I started hearing a loud banging and crashing on the side of the house from the outside, and that's when I knew there was no way this was an earthquake. It might feel like one, but it wasn't. This had to be, yes, a Sasquatch. Why did I know that in my head? I have no idea, but it was confirmed when I went outside. I guess at that point, anger had overtaken the lesser emotion, being fear, and I just thought heck with it, and I went outside. Looking back, probably bad, but at the time I was so PO'd, I was going outside to see what was going on, one way or the other. I had my dog with me. Well, I had my dog with me until we saw that thing, and my dog took off and abandoned me, and ran for the hills. I can't exactly blame it. It was the hugest, most terrifying thing I've ever seen, and probably will ever see, so the dog being scared, understandable. It was unbelievable. The first thing I noticed, that it looked like it had almost sunken, huge red eyes. Glowing red eyes, almost. And I know that sounds strange, but it's the best I can do to describe what I saw. Its head was very, very cone-shaped, and very sunken down onto its chest and shoulder area, so the head didn't actually stick up very far from the frontal view. It looked like its chest and arms were big, very big, but its legs actually looked much bigger, and I don't know if it was the musculature, or if it was just a lot more hair down in that area, but it looked almost like bottom-heavy, if that makes any sense. A lot bigger on the bottom than the top. Very weird looking. And I've thought about this a lot, and I wondered if maybe it spent so much time in the swamp area that it picked up a lot of debris and junk and gunk built up in its lower portion of its body, because it would have had to walk through this stuff many times, and the water would dry up, but the gunk might get stuck in its hair and just stay there. And being that it was too dark to really tell for sure, that's the only thing I could come up with. Regardless of how far off I am on my estimation, it's still the same thing. You're seeing the top half looking smaller than the bottom, when generally, when I've heard encounters in the past, you hear the opposite. You hear of them having a very big upper section and not as big of legs, or at least that's what I've heard. When this thing saw me, it turned to the side a little bit and screamed really loud, like a roar. I don't know a scream or a roar how you would describe it, but it scared the crap out of me. I don't know why it didn't face me when it did that scream, but I'm fine with that, because it would have been even louder and even more terrifying. When I saw this thing initially, when it came around the side of my house, it was only maybe 15 feet from me. But I backed up really quickly to try to put some distance on me, and it was probably more like double that really quick, about 30 feet. My plan was to get up onto my back porch and get my dad's old Winchester that I kept out there. But as I was sort of backpedaling and finally made my way up to the first couple steps, this thing had already started to take off and run the opposite direction, to my right. I was trying to get up these stairs, and I was reaching and fumbling for this, as I said, Winchester. I was looking around, hoping I would see or hear my dog, or at least see if there was any of these other ones around me, if it had any friends around me. Well, nothing. Nothing anywhere in any direction, so all I could focus on at that point was this thing running off. Its strides were very long and loud and thumping. It wasn't like anything I've ever seen running before. It was a very awkward, long stride. And I don't mean awkward like it was going to fall all over itself. It just didn't look natural. To me, if I tried to run that way, I'd fall over. But boy, could it cover some ground. That thing could move. And you know what? At that point, it all happened so quick, I didn't have any sort of a backup plan, so I guess I'm just sort of lucky that this thing took off. Because if it decided to come after me, what would I have really done? My dog was not there to protect me. I didn't have the Winchester. The reason I keep saying that is because I don't know how these keyword things work on your channel, and I just want to be on the safe side, for your sake. But like I said, I was just a sitting duck. If it really wanted to get to me, what would I have done? As this thing got pretty far out, I noticed it stopped, and sort of turned to the right and made a noise and turned to the left and made another even louder noise. I don't know, it was almost like it was calling its buddies or something, but I didn't see any other ones. It eventually made its way further enough out to where I couldn't see it or hear it anymore. Al, I'm telling you, this thing was so menacing looking. You know, a lot of people say they look a lot like people and just like a normal human, and maybe some of them do and some of them don't, I don't know. But from the details I could see on this one, it was more monster than human, or at least that's the way I would describe it. And maybe that sounds mean, maybe it was because it was dark, I don't know. But to me, it just looked like a monster. It did not look like a person at all. Other than the humanoid shape, of course. It has, 4 limbs and a head and blah blah blah, but other than that, it just looked like a monster version of a person. Its face was very distorted and odd looking, and it almost had like a snout, or an elongated snout to it, kind of like a baboon, only not as big, and it was disgusting looking. Of course, maybe this thing thought I was disgusting looking. You know, it's all about perception. Other than the details I've already given you, the overall appearance of this thing, I would say, is very close to that skunk ape picture that is so famous that goes around, everybody talks about it, you know, with the tall, tall grass and this thing looking to the side, the famous Florida skunk ape. I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering that correctly, that's what it looked like. The rest of the features that I hadn't already said specifically, that's what this thing looked like. And man, was it creepy. It was like something out of a nightmare. I was trying to remember any more details that I could give you about its appearance, but I don't know. I guess the thing was so scary that maybe I'm not remembering everything. Your memory sort of works that way. Sometimes memories are blocked partially if something's too scary to describe later or think about later. But I did my best. Well, that's my experiences, Al. I hope you enjoy it, and your listeners do too. We need this information. We need these stories. We need this outlet. We need people to come forward. There's no reason to be afraid. Come forward and tell us of your experiences like I have, and get the truth out there. For Pete's sake, it's about time, don't you think? And to those who are doubtful to send in their stories because they don't think they're a very good storyteller, well, I think you could tell I'm not a very good storyteller from this one, and it still got done, didn't it, Al? Yes, it did. Still got through it, so thank you for sending that in very much. Guys, as always, thanks for listening, and let's continue to do everything we can as a community to not only get the truth out there about this stuff, but also to grow this channel, or as far as that goes, to grow anybody's channel that's helpful to the whole phenomenon. It's not just all about me, of course. You know, we need to do everything we can to grow all of these outlets, or grow all of these sources of information. So I think we can all keep chipping in, and, you know, it's working, slowly but surely. We're spreading the word, and, you know, this site's growing, other sites are growing, communities are growing, and the truth is being let out more and more as we go along. So we all have the same basic, I think, other than just an interest. I don't think it's just an interest in a selfish way. I think we all sort of want this stuff to come to light, and we're all doing our part. So that's fantastic. It's a great thing. Guys, I will see you next time, okay? Bye-bye. As much of them as I can remember during this email. And I'm the type of person, I don't care how many times I see Bigfoot, I don't care how many times it terrifies me, I'm still going up there. I am not going to stay in my house and live in fear, because staying in the house, to me, I would rather die. I'd rather be out there and just take my chances. I always have some sort of protection with me. Don't want to have to use it, but if I have to, I will. And it's just too lovely of a place up there. It's just my place to go. I love it more than any place I've ever been in the world, and I've traveled fairly extensively, and I will never stop going back. It is just gorgeous. I think people should all go up there at least once in their lives to see what I'm talking about. Buddy, I think I've watched every single one of your videos, and I've never once heard the Isle of Or mentioned, which is very surprising to me. I guess I will mention, if it has any relevance to your listeners, that I am of Native American descent, and our people, as you would call it, have had a lot more experience, I think, dealing with the Sasquatch people than just your average, you know, Tom, Joe, Dick, and Harry. I don't know about all the other tribes, of course, but with mine, there are a lot of what you would call stereotypical ceremonies and coming-of-age rituals and things like that that you do by yourself and with your family. And so I've been up there many times, walking around a lot, covering a lot of distance, covering a lot of ground, and I won't go into details of what we were doing because that's private to my family, but because of those types of events, I guess you would say, we were up there a lot, and I was up there alone a lot, so it gave me a lot of time to enjoy the wilderness. Many, many times that I have been canoeing up in that area, I have gotten creepy, strange feelings, and I had a good idea of what it was. I happen to believe, and I know a lot of people do not believe this at all, but I happen to believe that Bigfoot has some sort of like mental capability to give us bad feelings or something like that if it's, you know, in our area, we're in its area, and it doesn't want that to be the case, so it can kind of give off this vibe that you feel, and then, you know, you're sort of driven away because you don't want to feel like that. And again, that's perfectly fine that a lot of people do not believe that, but that's what I believe, and I felt that many times. But there was this time that I was canoeing, and there's a place that's very special that I like a lot. It has a lot of very smooth, flat stones that are kind of nice to walk on barefoot, because I do a lot of walking barefoot. And there's a place where you can get your canoe up into this little inlet in the water, and it's almost like a little miniature pond, and you can pull it up in there, and it won't go back out into the main area of water. It's, you know, I shouldn't say formulated. It's just set up in such a way that when you drag it in there, you know, it's only up to maybe halfway to your knees, and you can just stick it in there, and it won't go anywhere. So that's where I would, I guess you'd say, dock my canoe, and once I had been on the water for quite a while, I would sometimes want to just get out and walk. It's, you know, stretch your legs and feels a little bit better than being stuck in that canoe for a really long time. So I'd be walking along the bank, and as I said, I would get odd and strange feelings. But they were never foreboding in such a way that made me feel like, oh my gosh, I gotta get out of here immediately. My wife I could fit in the canoe easily too, because she's a little skinny mini, very short compared to me as well. But a lot of the times I just enjoyed, and not because I didn't want to be around my family at all, but I enjoyed alone time up there. And that's when this happened, the initial encounter that I was getting to. I saw some, oddly enough, butterflies kind of floating around this little entrance or pathway into the woods, and me always being a little bit of a admittedly whimsical person, I decided to go up in there and just see what they were fluttering around about, or just see them up close. And once I got there, and couldn't really realize what they were doing anyway, and, you know, had my fill of looking at them for a few seconds, I went ahead and headed into the woods because it was cooler and more shady in there, and it was just more comfortable. And I just wanted to walk around the woods, plain and simple. I mean, there's sort of a lost feeling we don't have in society anymore, or as much anymore, of just enjoying nature. And I've never broken away from that ever since I was a kid. And I don't think that's because I'm Native American, I just think I really enjoy it. But I'm going in there and walking through the woods, and kind of, I like to sort of challenge myself to get over big rocks or, something that's kind of would be impassable or hard to, I shouldn't say impassable, but, hard to get over, like maybe a big fallen tree or something like that, or a very steep hill. I like those sort of situations. They challenge me physically, and I think that's good for your health. So, and that's the kind of terrain that was in the woods at that particular spot once this sort of trail kind of, I don't know, gave way to a thicker part of the forest. And I guess technically, since it didn't really lead anywhere or keep going as a trail, then that by definition would make it not a trail. But that's what it looked like from the outside. So anyway, there was this fallen tree, a big one, and it wasn't fallen all the way down. There was actually a big steep hill right there, so where it fell, it was still at very much of a steep angle. So I decided, as I said in my bare feet, because I love to be a goofball like that, to try to climb that up like a ladder and get over that big steep hill. Which was harder than I realized because, for one, it was more dead than I realized, so it gave way under my feet a couple times, but I was still up for the challenge. So I finally made it up to the top. Not really that worse for wear. Well, when I got up to the top and could kind of see over that hill, I started just looking around, and I heard this really loud, like, crashing sound. You know how things sound really loud in the woods, and sometimes they're really not? To me, it was kind of like maybe a big bird that spotted me, and it was just sort of flapping around in its nest or the leaves or whatever and taking off really fast. When I say crashing, I don't mean like something very heavy. It's just when you're moving around at a fast pace, things like leaves and little branches and stuff, it sounds very loud in the woods. Because a lot of times in the woods, it's very quiet, so a sound like that is pretty jarring. But admittedly, I didn't know what it was, so it did kind of shock me, and I looked around in all directions trying to figure out what it was or where it came from, but I didn't see any signs of movement. So I'm walking along, and I find this big stick, and I just kind of picked it up as like a walking stick. I didn't really need it. It was just, fun to have, kind of something to lean on and just something to do. A lot of times I'll do that. I really don't know why. It's not really fun, but I mean, you find a big stick in the woods. Maybe that's the type of thing you start doing as a kid, and then it's just a habit, You don't really need a walking stick, but I got one anyway. Or maybe it's sort of an inner thing, like, you know what? Maybe if I have this, maybe subconsciously you're thinking it's some sort, form of protection. Not that I need a stick as protection. But I started walking along with that, and I happened upon this sort of area that went down at a sharp angle and then back up at a sharp angle. And there was a lot of crap and brush down there, and I thought, I don't really know that I want to go through all that because I'll probably get a bunch of thorns or something. I was trying to sort of size up my next move. Am I going to go around or what? Well, then I caught sight directly across from me, or basically directly across from me, on the highest point of that other hill after you go down and back up. The terrain looked that way. I'm trying to explain what it looked like. I caught sight of movement of, something dark that moved really fast. And when I tried to sort of focus in on it, I couldn't figure out exactly where it was. I saw it. I saw the general area, and I zoned in on the general area, but I didn't immediately get an idea of like, okay, now I know exactly what I'm looking at. I just knew that I saw something dark and something moving. Well, at that point, the sun was kind of coming through the trees in a very unfortunate way that was sort of blinding me. So I tried to take a couple steps to the side and a couple more steps, and I'm putting my hand up, blocking, shielding the sun. I finally got to a point where there was a thin tree that blocked the sun just right, as long as I didn't move to the side either way at all. And when I did that, when I could actually see, it took my eyes a second to adjust because, when you're looking right up into the sun, even indirectly, it can kind of somewhat blind you for a second. Well, once my eyes adjusted, I saw immediately the upper half of one of the Sasquatch people. Probably not even the upper half. Probably the upper third. And I don't know if it was kind of crouched down or what, but I could see only basically from the middle of its stomach or chest up. And once our eyes sort of met, I guess, or maybe it was already looking at me and then I saw it and it recognized that I saw it, it immediately slapped the ground really hard with both hands in a sort of threatening manner. You've seen other animals do that. But it slapped the ground a couple times really hard and made this really gruff, fast sound, this vocal sound, and I thought, okay, well, I better go ahead and get out of here, go backwards, and, get away from it, because it obviously doesn't want me here. But by the time I started backing up and moving away, it was already moving away, too. It was almost immediately moving away and out of sight, walking away, or maybe it was crawling, I couldn't tell, because the angle and everything, but it was moving away to where I couldn't see it, so I thought, well, I should be good then. That particular time that I saw one, it was a pretty short viewing. I didn't get to see it for very long, unfortunately, but there was zero doubt, zero possibility. It was a Sasquatch, for sure. I always like to say that because for some reason people always want to ask, are you sure you saw that? Yes, I'm positive what I saw. 100%. Hey, listen, buddy, I hate to have to do this to you. I know I said I was going to give more of a story, but I have to take off. The neighbor kids are outside destroying my plants for some reason, so there's going to be some yelling going on. I'll get back at you if I can soon. Hello, good morning. It is early morning, August 5th, 2022. Where's all the time going? I don't know. But anyway, let's get into an encounter that was emailed to me quite recently that I thought you all would enjoy. Hello, sir. I just got done sanding my boat down, getting it ready for painting, and I need some time off. Time for a beer and to tell you my fun little goings-on with the big hairy man. I figure I might as well tell you, I used to be a complete and total non-believer. I mean, you couldn't probably convince me with a high-definition photo. I was just so hard-headed, it would have been a waste of time. I put about as much stock into the belief in Bigfoot as I did about flat earth theories. Just didn't give it my time to think about. Figured I was smarter than all that. Boy, was I wrong. I don't have any problem admitting when I know I was wrong. And dang it, I stand corrected. Got 100% proof with my own two eyes. Here's the way I remember it. Out at my uncle's farm, I had a bunch of plants that I used to tend to. Initially, because it was so hot, I had one of those nursery shade cloths covering pretty much my whole plant area. But later, I realized the added bonus was that my nosy neighbors couldn't stare at me every time I was outside. They might be able to see my silhouette, but it just gave some decent privacy. I loved going out there at night to tend to my plants when it was so much cooler anyway. One time I was out there, I discovered one of the drawbacks was this. The woods were not far beyond that shade cloth, which hangs down around the perimeter, and now I can't see much beyond it. So now, when I hear something funky from the woods, I can't even look to see what it might be. Great. But now and then, I'd go out around the cloth, around the outside, shine my flashlight around. At some point, I'd feel confident enough to go back to work. I'm a scaredy cat sometimes, so what? But one night, it wasn't that simple. I actually saw a shadow pass by the cloth, and admittedly at first, I thought my headlamp was casting a shadow on the cloth from one of the plants. Reasonable theory. Until, that is, I saw a gigantic hand, a perfect outline of a hand, brush along the outside of the cloth, and that took my breath away. I ran inside like a little girl. That hand could have palmed a beach ball, and there's only one thing in my mind that could have had a hand like that. Bigfoot. Yeah. As I ran inside and slammed that door and pulled those blinds down as quick as I could, I'm just sitting there with the door locked and out of breath because, frankly, I'm out of shape. But I didn't run that far. I was just really scared and freaked out. I didn't know what to do. So I'm just standing there in the kitchen, out of breath, mind racing, heart pounding, and feeling like a complete child for running inside. But you didn't see the size of that hand. The scariest thing I've ever seen up to that point in my life. A friggin' hand that could probably encompass my entire head. Absolutely nuts, beyond belief. I walked around peering out different windows and such, half wanting to see this creature, but half praying I didn't. It's like when you watch a scary movie. You don't want to be scared, but then again, why are you watching if that's the case? I couldn't see anything, but I mustered up the courage to peer under the blinds, expecting to see this being hunched over just on the other side of the glass peering in, which was enough to make me quiver out of fear. My heart just about stopped when I saw nothing, so I went back outside with my rifle because, frankly, too scared to go out there without it. I was shaking like a leaf and trying to find what this was, because no matter how scary it was, I couldn't drive myself crazy any longer cowering inside the house. I just had to do something. The absolute hardest part was forcing myself outside of the visual boundary of the shade cloth, because I knew at that point I'd be able to see far in both directions and the woods. That idea didn't exactly excite me, but I had to know, and I got my wish. When I looked out, I first looked to the right, and nothing. When I looked to the left, as fast as I could, I saw it. It was about halfway to the dirt path I used to take to go fishing, so it was still close enough my headlamp illuminated it enough to see pretty good details. I mother effed it up and down, etc., every curse word in the book, because honestly it was like a knee-jerk reaction against, a based-in-fear reaction. I was trying to sound angry, so I wouldn't appear weak, but it just let out a guttural shout that totally drowned out my best attempts. We both went silent. It walked toward the path and started down it like it was a route that it took every day. Looking at that Sasquatch, I felt so insignificant and pathetic, like an ant that it could just squish under its foot. Its voice was so loud I could feel it hit me like a jet engine. I was nothing compared to that guy. The big hairy guy is no joke, my friends. He is a mountain-sized being. I got a very short little burst of bravery and started to go to the end of the trail just so I could get one last look as it walked away, almost like I was still doubting what I had seen and needed to convince myself the rest of the way. But then I got a clue and turned back. No need to push my luck and chance being badly hurt or killed. I just stood there for a few seconds, seeing if I could hear it walking, which I could, faintly. It was surprising it wasn't louder, as huge as it was. I know from experience there are rocks and sticks, leaves, etc. on that trail all the time. The only thing I can compare its size to is Andre the Giant. I've seen him at a wrestling event, and this bad boy was bigger. Maybe not 3 feet bigger, but noticeable. And comparable body mass, too. I think Andre was over 7 feet and 400 or 500 pounds. Sasquatch didn't dwarf him, but you'd be able to see a noticeable difference in size, even from a distance, if that gives you an idea of just how big this Sasquatch is. I sat out there, outside of my shade cloth, for probably 4 different nights out of the next week. Rifle in hand, light in hand. It was about dusk, and I stopped dead in my tracks as I spotted him behind one of the trees, most of the way down the drive. At first it looked like the tree was falling over, or a large branch was breaking off, but it was just sort of an optical illusion, or whatever you want to call it. He peeked out, I stopped, and he went back behind the tree for just a second before moving away from the road. I don't know if he was trying to make me feel like I could come down there, but let's just say that didn't work. That delivery could wait. I went back to the house and just said to myself, wow, again, really? Or something of that nature. I was just shocked. I thought, is this thing trying to catch me out and do something to me? Or is it just curious and wants to get a better look? I've heard the Sasquatch people are very curious, and I hope that's all it was. But there's something about something being all stealthy and quiet that just creeps you out so bad. I'd rather see and hear something just bum rushing you and making all kinds of noise than something hiding in the bushes and waiting for you. That's just scary as heck. But I assume it continued away, back to wherever it comes from, because I didn't hear of it and see it or anything the rest of that night. Something tells me, and this is just purely a gut feeling, that it doesn't really live nearby. I get the feeling it lives far off and makes a journey to scout out places or people. Don't ask me what spurs that theory on inside me, but I could almost swear it's the case. I also saw the dang thing in my rear view of my flatbed one night. Coming home, it was about 2 a.m. and I was driving down a shortcut road near my neighbors, which they told me I could do. It was only maybe 500 feet or so from my house when I slowed way down to go over a washed-out ditch. When I did, I just happened to notice something in the rearview mirror, and it was like this monstrous-looking face just glaring at me. It was so big, it looked like it was right outside my cab, but it had to be beyond the back of the flatbed. I took off, just jostling myself all around the cab from slamming over that ditch. After just a couple seconds, I couldn't see it anymore, but you don't ever want to see what I saw. Just take my word on that. It was hideous. That glaring face, ugh. After that little incident, I wanted to drive around a little bit. I didn't want to go straight home. I wanted to smoke a couple hundred cigarettes and chill out. I was a nervous wreck. I bet I drove around for the better part of an hour or maybe more. I was driving all over the place on those old country roads. I needed that therapy, I guess, that mindless driving just to get my mind off the face that I saw. My goodness, that will scare you out of your wits. Horrible looking things. I mean, I'm an animal lover, but not this animal. Sorry, not sorry. In this case, why couldn't I just have seen it from far away? Is that too much to ask? Lucky if I don't have nightmares for the rest of my natural life, for Pete's sake. Well, as the old-timers say, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. So I hope you guys got to have a little bit of a scare, but not too much of a scare. I know people like the thrill of hearing things like this, but honestly, I'm glad everybody got to hear it, but I don't really hope that anybody has to go through what I did. Take care of yourselves. See you later. Guys, what in the heck are you up to? That's what I want to ask you this evening. First of all,